Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the session today. We are excited to get started and with the CIA, and I'm going to introduce the session on plant-forward culinary innovation with global and regional cuisines. We have two fantastic chefs with us today. CIA chef Toni Sakaguchi, who is executive chef for our strategic initiatives group, and executive chef Oona Settembre, chef for Kellogg's Away from Home. So I will let the chefs take it away.
Thank you, Shara. Okay. Well, I just want to say, Toni, it's a pleasure to be invited here and to join a conversation about the versatility of plant-based protein and some of the items that you showcased. And especially, I enjoyed your demonstration the other day, your culinary demonstration, along with Chef Susan Feniger, where you took the chorizo and did a plant-based dish, which is typically done with meat. So it was great and very inspiring. I enjoyed that.
Oh, great. Glad you enjoyed it. Great.
Good.
And then, yeah. So,
please.
No, I would say, I know it was, the chorizo was great to work with. I feel like it had a really good flavor and stuff, and it was kind of a natural fit. That was really good.
Yeah, it's the chorizo that we make is actually my favorite product of all products we make. The story behind it was amazing. It has a real authenticity of flavor because the food developer who designed it is actually from Monterrey, Mexico, and came here about 10 years ago, works for Kellogg, and it wasn't his typical role to design, and he spent many months working on different prototypes and taking those samples up and down the line of his factory, of his plant where he was working, and getting the guys who were from Mexico to taste it and weigh in. And basically they did so many different versions, and they got a secret recipe from someone's grandma. They had to pry it out of her. But it was really interesting, the story behind it. And I think the very first time I tasted it, I knew in my mind, because we eat a lot of chorizo, based in Texas, I just fell in love with it. But I loved it for its flavor because I felt like it had that true authentic flavor. And its versatility is what got me. The fact as well that with normal chorizo, you'd have to, as you know, take it out of a casing, fry it in a pan. You're going to get about 40 to 50% yield on normal chorizo. This comes already done into the crumble. You don't have to take casings, you don't have to fry, but it still has enough of the fat that is traditional and needed so that when you want to add other ingredients, like when you added your vegetables and your potato, then I think you can still get those traditional additions in there and have a little bit of fat. So I love the product. Learned a little bit more about it, and I love to use it in all sorts of ways. So that's my favorite Morningstar Farms product is our chorizo.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Was that there wasn't that much fat in it. And the funniest thing, my husband's also a chef, and I made him taste it, and he's like, I didn't tell him what it was. He thought it was chorizo, so that was really good.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly, I think, very close to him. I think it's because of the seasonings in it being traditional and being worked on with some love. I always think there's some love there. But as I said, I like it as well from an operator standpoint because I come from a background where I was an operator before I joined Kellogg. And my love for it is the fact that it comes to you, as I said, ready to kind of use, but it has a lot of versatility over the menu day part. So I don't want to get a product that I put on the shelf and have one menu use for it. A single SKU is money on the shelf, especially in the COVID world today where everybody's economics are struggling. I think that having a SKU, a SKU that you can use over multiple day parts is very helpful. So it's obvious for breakfast. It's obvious chorizo in a burrito or something else. But as you know, you can go on to all sorts of different day parts with that and do things like salads. You can stuff items with it. You can do empanadas like you're going to do for a snack. You can go on to doing a topping for bowls, like in a picadillo. So one product on the shelf that you can use across multiple day parts, I think, is helpful for any restaurant operator.
Yeah, and something that's versatile because I think, people are really interested in a lot of different global flavors and they want a lot of versatility because, like you said, you want to have one thing that you can turn into multiple things and stuff. And so, I think that worked out well.
Yeah, and I think that the flavor profile, I've taken it in different directions, as I said, beyond Latin. I've even made like a Korean, I put gochujang with it, interestingly enough. You can play up or down some of those spices. So I think the versatility to change it into different cuisines is a good one. And as we're going to talk about a dish I did before for us with taking it to a regional of a Louisiana style. We'll talk about that recipe later.
Okay, great. Well, we have a video of a plantain empanada that we had we talked about briefly in the demo, and I was going to say, why don't we show that and I can talk you through it, and then we can talk about.
And then we'll jump on the bit closer to home.
Yeah. So this is the plantain empanadas, and we talked about it briefly in the demo, and this is just another variation of the filling. So basically, it was sauteed onions until they're translucent. We added garlic until it was aromatic, and then the crumbles go in. And with the crumbles, I just kind of lightly browned them in order to kind of just give it a little bit of depth, because I love browning the meat. And then roasted corn, poblanos, and green onions go in, and then you add chopped cilantro and you chill it. And so then we'll add a little bit of cheese later on. And then the shell of the plantain, of the empanada, is a plantain. And so for that, I used really ripe plantains. I know we were talking about this earlier. And you just roast them in an oven until they're nice and soft. And then you puree them. And you got to puree them while they're hot because they firm up when they're cool. So you got to do it while it's hot so you get a nice smooth puree. And then you can form it once it's chilled. And then with the filling, I added in some queso fresco because I just queso fresco. And then we take the plantain puree, you form it into balls, and you use a tortilla press with a couple plastic sheets, and you press them out. You put a little filling in, you just kind of crimp the edges together. And you can either cook these immediately or you can refrigerate them and cook them later. Main thing is that you go in about 340-degree oil because they brown really quickly because of the sugars in the plantain. So you want to get them nice and dark, darker than you normally pop. Then serve some pickled onions and a little bit of a avocado cilantro crema. And that was it, so pretty, just using plantains for their sweetness in order to kind of balance out the spiciness and all the spice and flavor in the chorizo. So yeah. Yeah.
I particularly enjoyed your comment that you went with the right plantains to get that sweetness because of the spiciness and the amount of spices in the chorizo. I think that's a nice little bit of sweetness. I think it was a great use of the product. When I went a little different direction with the recipe that I used it. I was down in Louisiana for a conference, COEX, back down in March, and our theme of foods needed to have a Louisiana twist to it. So I made a jambalaya, and instead of using, because to me, I was actually going to make a paella with it. And I was going to include some seafood and replace the chorizo, get that meat and fish going, but then I wanted to keep it all vegan. So and then I did a little research and I found out jambalaya is Louisiana paella. That's where it started. The Spanish brought it there. So it was an interesting take to go right to that combination. So for me, what I did with it was, again, it's easy to use, and I wanted something that was easy to use and be able to produce in mass. So I wanted to make a jambalaya roll, a crispy roll. But to start with, I made a jambalaya, but I made it restaurant style. I used a hotel pan. Put my raw rice in a greased hotel pan, added my crumbles from the freezer right to the top, and then went ahead and sauteed the holy trinity, of course, some celery, some onion, some peppers. I added some poblanos as well because I wanted to have a little bit of color. And then I did a wild mushroom medley that I added in one pan to saute. And I did the wild mushrooms because I wanted to build on the meatiness that I was not going to be using by not using any shrimp or different items. So the wild mushrooms sauteed to bring out some of that flavor. And with that, I just put that on top of my rice and chorizo crumble mixture. And at the same time, I'd added some liquids to that pan, some tomatoes, some tomato paste, a little bit of tomato paste, some smoked paprika to bring out the smokiness of that dish, and basically put that on top of the raw rice in the pan. And of course, the liquids measured, and put the top on, boiled it up and baked it for about 35 minutes. And then by the way, I did use, instead of salt to build umami, I put red miso and a little soy to build on that. So I really wanted to keep building the umami that we're taking away by not having the seafood. And then but I baked it. And at the end, I let it rest 10 minutes. And then I stirred in some green onions. So there was my base of a jambalaya. And what I could have done if I wanted to keep it simple was to just serve it as a jambalaya or a jambalaya bowl and bring it up to more contemporary current day use by adding some fresh toppings on the top. So I would have maybe come up with maybe some sauteed greens, some spicy sauteed greens, and something crispy, because I always love that crispy element. Maybe I would have even done some tiny little eggplant fries or crispy onions or shallots. But I went ahead and wanted to make it into something that was handheld. So I went ahead and made egg rolls with it. And so therefore it morphed from being a simple dish to being, one that we put in egg rolls and fried them crispy. And I think we served several hundred of them and that evening at the show. So, I enjoyed doing that with the jambalaya. And there's your little pictures of the jambalaya. But these are my camera's pictures. They're not professional. But I like the fact that it was pretty foolproof to do it in the hotel pan, as we do rice in restaurants most of the time. So so for C&U or anything else, you could definitely take that and have a fairly foolproof dish. And I must say the folks in the kitchen at the hotel loved it. So that was a big testament to me. They actually enjoyed it. And they actually were surprised again. They said, no, this is meat. This has got meat in it. I said, no, it hasn't got meat in it. So it was enjoyable for that reason. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That looks great. And I think, it's also the convenience factor, right? One pan to cook it, and then you roll them all and make them in advance.
Yeah, I think the one pan thing is the biggest thing. And today, especially when restaurants are looking also for dishes that work well for transportation, I think that's something to keep in mind today, that the dishes we're putting on menus now, we're going to be designing them in a way to hold up to transportation and still be palatable and be appealing. So taking something like that and making it in a bowl and having your crispy toppings packed separately, your warm container in the insulated container, I think that's the way we're all looking at creating food that survives, today's COVID world. French fries are going to be a hard one to do a whole lot with,
Yeah, it's the whole, it has to be packable, right? And transportable.
Packable, portable, transportable. But I still think, and some restaurants have obviously used to do a very good job with that. And a lot of more restaurants do a great job with it even now on this dish, on creating menu items that are craveable, that can transport.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I wanted to talk about regional flavors and dishes. When I work with plant-based products, I actually look to their meat counterparts when I'm looking for inspiration to make something with. So any one of our crumbles, be it the chorizo or our sausage crumbles, I look to dishes that might contain a ground mixture to start with. So it might be a keema on an Indian dish. It might be like the Israeli dish, which you have the spiced beef. I mean, I'd be looking for a shepherd's pie mixture or something to translate a bolognese, for example, where you're going to use something and build out the flavors, but then try and give it a more contemporary twist. But I look to inspiration for dishes that kind of resemble that in the way they act and feel. So I'm already starting off with almost a sauteed product. I think they're easier to translate to any cuisine that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great strategy, I think, in terms of looking at that.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's also, just as they had said in the previous, Jack Lee had mentioned in his presentation, flavor first, and the dishes, you talk about these dishes that were meat-based are all very satisfying, and so they have to be satisfying dishes. And then you're like replacing the meat, but it's not like it's obvious, so it's the whole what's there and not necessarily what's not there, in terms of
exactly
the approach you're taking.
And I think we talked about that from a value standpoint. Value is what the guest sees on the menu. And I think we're in an era today where people definitely want to eat more plant-based foods. I was reading a statistic like 1 in 4 people want to see more plant-based foods on the menu, and are just open it. And people, that's like a lot of people to have 1 in 4 wanting to see more on the menu and wanting to eat more plant-based. So I think that we're going to this age where people are seeing it, as Jack said, less than something you're taking away, as more than something of what are you giving me with this? And translating it, I said, to exciting flavors. Today, people want exciting flavors. They want that, especially with COVID now. I think when we get through this, people are going to be desperate to want to eat out again, you know, and they're starting to look, they've been eating in for quite a while, but they're looking for, you know, flavor inspiration on those menu items.
Yeah, yeah. I think people will go for, you know, it's curious on, you know, you ask people, what do they want to have like their first meal out? And sometimes it's like they want to go to the place that their favorite place and have like their favorite dish. Or it's like, I always think it's like for us at home, it's always like something that that's not easy to make at home. You know, it's like either we can't get the ingredients or we're not that good. You know, we don't specialize in that, so we can't make as good as it would be if we went to the restaurant.
I was reading that Mexican food is I think the most sought after when you ask people what's the cuisine they want to eat, and that leads right into the technique. How real true Mexican food takes a whole technique behind it, and it's just not So it's an awful lot of work. You know, we're basically eating feast food sometimes, which would be on your Saints Day once a year, and expecting, you know, restaurants to turn them out. And we're, you know, so I think Mexican cuisine is, you know, based on the labor. I'm like, when I go out to eat, if I'm going out to eat, I try, even if I crave something, I tend to go for dishes that are a lot of labor because I think I'm not going to make that. I don't want to have to do all that work. Well, the chef really worked on this one. So, you know, things that maybe involve a lot of things that are very messy, you know, as far as cooking, will take a lot of different pots and pans and labor behind it.
Yeah. No, I'm always look for something that I probably wouldn't make at home, you know, or something that, just something interesting. Kind of what
I was going to also wonder if you had some different ways that you've brought plant-based foods to life that you'd want to talk about that we haven't now, and also ask our audience if there's ways that they've brought plant-based foods to life in different ways that they would like to chime in on.
Yeah, I think with plant-based foods, I feel like we do a lot of plant-based foods here, you know, with the conferences and things, because, you know, menus of change principles are kind of the underlying principles of. And so things that I look for are ways to incorporate wherever I can, you know, so whether it's going whole grain or changing a coating on something, or just using, like on the picadillo, you know, adding mushrooms and onions to the base of it, and then putting the chorizo in there also, you know, just to add more vegetables to it, and on a dish that's already got a lot of plants in there, you know, so I'll kind of look at things like that in terms of trying to add in more plant-based items onto menus and things.
And I think
also global inspirations.
We also talked a little bit about adding elements such as quinoa for the protein aspect of it to bump up the protein. It seems like a lot of people are looking for more protein also in their diets lately.
Yeah, and you know, it was an interesting comment you had earlier when you were talking about coating something, the chicken in quinoa.
Yeah, I was surprised it worked. You know, like as chefs, you know, we kind of get nuggets from somewhere. And I think, as I mentioned, I found that little nugget, you know, someone said, well, I coated chicken in quinoa. So then I went and coated some arancini I'd made with one of our other products and coated it in quinoa, cooked quinoa, of course, not soggy cooked, but nicely cooked quinoa that was chilled, and coated it in that and put a little pan spray, and then put it in the oven and cooked it for about 20 minutes, and it actually got crispy. So I was kind of surprised by that too, but it was a nice functional additional element for sure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Chef Oona and Chef Toni, so much. This has been an insightful discussion. Greatly appreciate you taking the time to let us in on this little chef-to-chef conversation today. We're going to close out the session, and we are heading back to our main stage. In case anyone didn't see it in the chat, I posted URLs to take a look at both the empanada recipe that Toni walked us through and the Morningstar Farms crispy rolls recipe that Chef Oona walked us through. So thank you all so much. I'll see you on the stage in just a moment.